I am so excited. We have St. Louis Blues hockey tonight. This is the pregame show for the home opener. Usually I don't go live. However, I made an exception because I cannot control my excitement. This is Locked on Blues.
You're Locked on Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked on Blues. I am your host of Locked on Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I have to tell you, St. Louis, I am so excited for tonight's game against the Minnesota Wild coming up in a little bit over 20-ish minutes. So this is a pregame show. We're going to talk all things Blues hockey, what I liked on this road trip, and what I'm most excited to seeing in this game tonight here at Enterprise. So thank you for watching, and I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It is a game day, and I cannot wait. I am buzzing off the wall. So I don't live in St. Louis, right? And I've talked about that before, but I am a Blues fan. So I'm an out-of-state Blues fan, and there's something about the Blues playing on home ice, even though I am not physically in St. Louis, that gets me excited. You know, I always tell people where I live, right? I'm like, Robert Thomas season, Ruzy. I talk about Captain Braden Shen on a daily, and the love and passion that I have for the Blues, it is so real. So being able to do this podcast really does allow me to connect with all of my other fellow Blues fans, and I just find that really exciting. So I'm just so excited to get into today's pregame show. Of course, leave a comment. I usually don't go live too often, but this was an exception because I was just too excited not to do a video. I'm going to obviously do a postgame recap video, which I always do, but just for fun, I'm like, why not do a pregame show? So anyways, let's talk about the lineup tonight versus those Minnesota Wild. So for the Blues, on our first line, we have Robert Thomas centering, followed by Brandon Saad on the left and Jakey Neighbors on the right. For those that don't know, Brandon Saad actually has a kid. That's why he wasn't out on the road trip. So congratulations to him and his wife. It was a beautiful baby girl. But he even said that he was not recovering, but he was working out and getting ready to play while the Blues were away. So he was hitting the weight room, getting on the ice and conditioning. So yes, he was not injured, even though he was on like the IR technically. He just was there because his wife was having a baby. Okay. On the second line, we have Boucher centering. Then we have Zachary Bolduc on the left and Jordan Kyer on the right. Now, it's funny because Doug Armstrong said in the beginning of the season, right, or training camp, whatever, if that to me is the beginning of the season, he said that he really did believe that Zachary Bolduc could be a top 6 forward, and we're seeing that now in the lineup, and I am really excited for him. He was one of the players I actually interviewed when he came to Philadelphia the last time, and the Blues are coming back here in Philly in a couple weeks, and I cannot wait to see the team again. But he just has this kind of swagger about him, and his presence on the ice was great during preseason. It was great during training camp. So I feel like he does deserve this. It sucks initially that he wasn't on the opening, day roster because they play that day game in Seattle. However, just, due to Saad and just other things, he was able to get elevated. But I am really excited to see this for him on the lineup. Now, this is funny because this is the third line, and this was the line I actually predicted the Blues to go with heading into training camp. So centering is hashtag Captain Braden Shen. I'm always going to call Braden Shen Captain Braden Shen. On the left is Dylan Holloway, and on the right is Matthew Joseph. So you might look at Holloway and say, whoa, how do you go from being in the first line to being in the third line? The way I describe it is this. It's very simple. The St. Louis Blues have a lot of offensive talent. And for Dylan Holloway, I think if you went in with the expectation that he was a first liner, you were doing yourself injustice, okay? I think playing alongside with the captain of the team is such a benefit. I know what they always say, the best players go on the first lines and then it goes down. And while that is true, one thing that the Blues needed to do that they didn't do last season was have a strong third line. Last season, Kevin Hayes was centering that third line, and it just was not strong. It was one of the weaker lines that the Blues had. Captain Braden Shem was up in the second line centering that. So I think now that you're elevating this third line, you're giving the Blues such an opportunity to gain more success. So I don't take this as a negative for Dylan Holloway. I take this as the opposite. I take this as, hold on, we are improving this whole entire roster, this whole entire lineup, and we're allowing Dylan Holloway to get more minutes on ice. He's very deserving of it, but I just think that it's important for me to put it out there that it is not a negative for Dylan Holloway. Then we have the fourth line. We have Foxa centering, Turpachenko on the left, and my Aussie Nathan Walker on the right. So this line is called WTF, what the bleep. That's the nickname that they have for it, and I do enjoy this line. I think Nathan Walker just brings some energy onto the ice. You know what he reminds me of? Maybe not skill-wise, but not even just like a nicer version of Brad Marchand. That's who Nathan Walker reminds me of. I just love when he's on the ice. Our defensive pairs, like usual, Big Fish Nicoletti and Colton Parayko, Philip Broberg and Justin Folk, and then Suter and Kessel. So again, we don't see Scott Perunovich in the lineup tonight. I'm not surprised about that. Here's the thing. And I've talked a lot about, Scott Perunovich, right? And Bennington is in net. Scott Perunovich, I kind of figured he would be that odd man sitting out, but I am curious when they're going to use him. Now, I'm not saying that, he deserves minutes over another player just because I feel like Ryan Suter has been impressing me like no other, and I could go on and on about him. But realistically, and if you're watching this podcast, and if you're watching live right now, leave a comment. Do you see Scott Perunovich being put in this lineup other than if somebody gets injured? I am curious what you think. I personally cannot justify that. And I'm sorry to Scott Perunovich. I like him. I think that, he has improved his game. I watched him in Springfield a lot last year. I just don't know if his playing ability is as strong maybe as, I don't know, as we thought heading into the season. It's not fair for him to get the start over other players at the moment. So that's basically how I feel about it. And I know that sounds kind of tough, but I think at the end of the day, you have to have those open and honest kind of conversations. And if they don't end up using Scott Perunovich, my question then is, well, why is he even here, right? They signed him for another year, which, okay. But at the end of the day, like, are you going to use him or not? I would rather him get playing minutes down in Springfield to at least elevate his game. However, I understand if he gets put on waivers, like that could have been a tough situation. But one of my favorite accounts, by the way, Blues Muse, we're friends, so shout out to Blues Muse, says the Blues at home in this past season, because I want to focus yet again on the fact that this is our home opener, and today is kind of that pregame show. So last season, the Blues had 25 wins at home, 14 losses at home, 2 overtime losses at home, which is pretty good, right? And then Blues News had this really interesting fact about Jordan Kyrou's career versus Minnesota. 19 games played, 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points. Like, pretty amazing. So I just wanted to put that out there because I follow so many different Blues accounts. And I think that for me, at least being a Blues fan, I want to be able to give you guys shout outs. Like, for instance, Robert Thomas's Edges sent me a message and said, hey, Hale, I'm going to be at the Blues versus Islanders game. I would love to be able to send you videos like during the game, just, and I want you to do that. I want you to feel connected to this podcast. I mean, part of this podcast is for you to have your voice too. So I just want to put that out there, that I love when you all message me, and I'm really looking forward to the season. But there's something else. We have a game after a really crazy road trip. How do I think the players are going to respond? And what exactly is going on with Sundqvist? Well, we'll talk about that coming up here in Locked On Blues. But first, hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunt in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Listen, I told you to choose the Lions over the Cowboys, right? And if you listened, it was Jerry Jones' birthday. You saw a very upset Jerry Jones. You saw the Cowboys lose, and you got some money from FanDuel. So I want to continue on, maybe blessing you a little bit. The Cowboys have a bye week. So what other team would we like to see lose? If you're thinking the Kansas City Chiefs, well. I hate the 49ers. However, I feel like this is the team that the Chiefs might fall to. The 49ers are a team. The Kansas City Chiefs are 5-0. But what did I tell you about the Kansas City Chiefs? They're not called the Kansas City Chiefs. They're called the Kansas City Chiefs plus refs, because the refs do everything they can so KC wins. So this weekend, what I want you to do, it's a 425 kickoff bet on those San Francisco 49ers and get the Chiefs the L they deserve. Okay, so going on. IT's home opener, very exciting, but there are still some players, still some people that we need to talk about. One of them being Oscar Sundqvist. Coach Bannister spoke about Sundqvist, and I want you to take a listen to what he said, because a sunny lineup might be happening very soon. And if Oscar does return, well, what does that mean? Take a listen.
Sunny is cleared for contact, yeah. Yeah, I just think he's just kind of going through the protocol right now. It's definitely probably not week to week, more day to day, but I think he's still a little ways away. Just with playing every second day, it's hard to get him in a lot of contact with our group. So might be a little bit longer than 5, 6, 7 days, which probably puts him into later on next week at home, but we'll see how it goes over the next few days at least.
So Coach Bannister said essentially that Sundqvist is day-to-day. And what does that mean? Because a lot of the lines I really like. However, it does make me think of that fourth line, which Sonny was a part of last season. I love those guys. When I interviewed them last season, it was a blast. But obviously, when I look at that fourth line, I think of Foxa. I'm like, oh, maybe he would get the shove. It really just depends. I mean, I'm not saying Sonny automatically will go into the line. However, I just feel like he's going to get played when he's able to return so they can kind of see what he's capable of. But that was just my thought. It's an interesting thing because I feel like this team, they're solid. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of positivity from them. I'm seeing a lot that I like. And speaking of that fourth line, the Blues, they had an interesting win during this trip. And I want you to hear from Nathan Walker a little bit about that win and how the team kind of came together.
Yeah, definitely. We're still pretty calm. Obviously 2 quick goals like that can rattle you a bit, but we just knew it was time to get to our game and do the little things right, and knew it was going to eventually pay off. There's a couple words said, but we're all pros and grown men here. We know how to react, and I think we definitely responded in the right way.
The Blues had multiple comeback wins, right? Against San Jose, and then, of course, against the Seattle Kraken, who's talking about the Kraken. And I want you to understand that this fourth line is a very important fourth line. A lot of great plays have happened, and I've liked what I've seen a lot, maybe not from Alexi so much. But however, Nathan Walker, he's just one of those players that is not afraid to get himself involved. Another player that I want to talk about that a lot of focus should be on is Jordan Kyrou. And part of doing this pregame show is to kind of give you a recap, not just of tonight's game against the Wild, but of what we've seen from the Blues. And we have seen a very explosive Jordan Kyrou. Now, when it comes to Jordan Kyrou, I am a big Kyrou fan. And listen, last season, yes, I was upset with him due to some things, right? And I addressed that. But he has 6 points already with 2 goals and 4 assists, which I really think is a great thing. He had 2 goals against Seattle. And then he had the 2 assists in San Jose. And then he had the 2 assists in the VGK. So 2 goals for 6 points. Pretty pretty good. So let's go hear what Jordan Kyrou had to say as well.
First period, we kind of started off a little slow. We were playing a little hesitant, not being aggressive on pucks, and kind of after Walks and Torpo and Faxa, they scrummed it up a little bit there, got the boys going a little bit, and we started playing our game. Yeah, it just gets you pumped up. First game of the year, it's excitement and it's exciting, and seeing the boys fight for you like that, it's awesome. So it just gets you pumped up.
And that's what the Blues had to do. I mean, all other games, I know the VGK Bushi scored. He was the first one to score. The ones that they won, at least, they came from behind. I mean, Captain Braden Schenkel, that overtime, I was going to say shootout, that overtime winning goal. So I think that, the Blues have to come on strong tonight. They have to attack immediately. They don't have time to hesitate, to lollygag. They need to just get going right away. That's how they're going to find success on the ice. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm not trying to be negative. But again, San Jose, a team that has talent, however, not the best. I know this is out of order. The Seattle Kraken, again, a team that's kind of, bottom average. Then you have the VGK, who are actually a pretty good team this season, who the Blues could have came back, listen, that Jack Eichel. But yeah, they were in it the whole time, essentially. So with the Wild tonight, they really need to attack immediately. And I think that's another thing, too, is that, hey, listen, the Blues, they have an opportunity here. They have an opportunity to say, you know what, we're just not this team that, comes back all the time, even though it's a great thing and it's exciting. We're also a team that can make a statement early on. And I thought with the VGK, they were going to do that when Bushi got that goal right away. But hey, things don't work out, which is completely fine. But I want to take a look at the Minnesota Wild, right? Because their season has been kind of interesting. So they won 3-2 over the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday. Then they had a shootout loss to the Seattle Kraken, 5-4. And then they had an OT loss against the Winnipeg Jets on Sunday, 2-1. So what am I learning about the Minnesota Wild? Well, they're not scoring a bunch of goals, right? These have been more low-scoring games besides the Kraken, but that was a shootout. So I am curious tonight, maybe how they perform. Listen, I'm sure this is going to be a closer game than we think. I did that crossover of Seth, who does the Locked on Wild podcast, a couple weeks ago at this point. And Seth and I really got into conversation about the Wild and what they're capable of doing. And the Wild, listen, I know that they're not playing him tonight, but they have one of my favorite players in the NHL, which is Marc-Andre Fleury, right? I'm a big Flower person. But at the end of the day, they do have talent, and you cannot deny the fact that the Wild are a team that you can't kind of count out. So I think that you can't go into this either, naive and thinking, oh, well, this will be an easy win. Yes, do I think the Blues have more talent than the Wild? Absolutely. But Coach Hines, who is their coach, said, I thought there were some things that they were fatigue issues at certain points in the game. Talking about Winnipeg. And that's the key word, fatigue. He said that he thought the Wild had some fatigue in them. The thing with the St. Louis Blues is they never had fatigue in them late in the game. The third period, the Blues are always explosive. So if he's saying that the Wild were able to kind of get worn out by the Winnipeg Jets, what does that tell me about the game tonight? It tells me that if the Blues continue to play as hard as they have been playing, they can wear the Wild out and find success that way. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but when I see Coach Hines essentially saying, hey, listen, this team, kind of got worn out by a Winnipeg team, and the Winnipeg Jets are pretty good. I'm not going to lie. They do look kind of good and scary. However, that just shows me that maybe the Wild are more of a first half type of team, if that makes sense. But anyways, you can't afford to do that. You really can't afford to do that. I'm not nervous for this game, right? I'm more so excited for it just because I feel like this is like a Central Division game. It's more fun when it's that way, right? I just think that the Minnesota Wild have talent, right? Makes me nervous, but they only have one win, and that's fine. And the boys are on the ice right now. They did their pregame warm-ups already, and I feel like, well, I don't know. This game could go either way, but people are, the Wild are minus like 120, which I think is kind of stupid just because I'm like, why is it only minus 120? But however, I feel like this is going to be a really good game tonight, and I'm excited. So I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the game tonight, get some more excited in, but I want to talk to you about my friends over at Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you the boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever you're in the mood. The process is 100% aligned, so there's no need for an uncomfortable doctor's visit. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option prescribed. Your medical medications will be shipped directly to you in discreet packaging, and it is going to be free, the packaging. And no insurance is needed, so start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatments. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable and compounded products, which are not approved by or verified by the Safety of Effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine appropriate restrictions apply. See the website for details and important safety information. Subscription is required. Prices vary based on products and subscription plan. So that's our friends over at Hims. Before I wrap up, I'm so excited. I feel like I'm just like, I'm just filled with emotion, right? Just because it's so special. This is one of my favorite times in hockey, like home openers. It's so much fun. But before I do that with the Blues and Wild, letting you go through that, I just want to give you some more information about the Wild. So obviously this was coach, I don't know if I mentioned this, John Hines' first full season with the team after taking over the position in November of last year. So kind of like, how it was with Coach Bannister, right? So obviously Carrillo has been their big star, which I get. The Wild have missed the playoffs last season after finishing 10th in the Western Conference. So not good. Obviously, Matt Boldy scares the heck out of me. So that's another player. I know I talked to Seth about that. That makes me kind of nervous. He had 69 points last season with 29 goals and 40 assists in the 75 games. So this year is the 30th anniversary season of the team's home venue, the Enterprise Center. Which is so exciting for that. So that is something. Binner's start will be the 276th of his career, which is moving him ahead of Curtis Joseph for the second position of Blues all-time franchise list. Robert Thomas is expected to appear in his 400th career games. Thomas, my boy, it's always a Robert Thomas season. Parika's assist on Friday was the 200th of his career, being the sixth defenseman in franchise history to reach 200 assists, which also includes Petro, Chris Pronger, my boy. And then Brandon Saad is shy of 500 career points. A fun fact, every single Blues player that has left for paternity leave, if you're a guy, sorry. Whenever they come back, they end up scoring a goal. And, Coach Batty was actually asked about that. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that, dad power. So maybe we'll see a goal tonight. I'm going to watch some Blues hockey, and you should too. This was the Blues pregame show. I'm sorry, I have a lot of energy. I'm just so excited. I feel like it's like Christmas Day. But anyways, I will talk to you tomorrow to recap tonight's hopeful victory. Keyword, hopeful. All right. And like always, how I end every single episode, let's go Blues.